Could you define for me the meaning of therapeutic community and how it applies in this setting here at the Bridges of America?
Therapeutic community is a culture, and it's a lifestyle, and it's a language, and it's something completely different from anything that any of our clients do before they come into our programs. A therapeutic community is a healing place, and it's where the community, the clients, the inmates, are the main focus of that healing. And it's something different for every counselor or ops tech who comes to work in our communities, because it's a whole different approach. And it's something that they learn, and it becomes a part of them, and they embrace it, and they get to practice it, and then they take it along with them when they leave. So it's not anything that, you get a piece of it, and then it's finished and you walk away. It's something that it becomes a part of your core, a part of who you are and your thinking and your heart, because there's a lot of effort and a lot of work and a lot of real soul searching that goes into learning how to be in a therapeutic community.
So it becomes who you are. And often we say that not only a therapeutic community is not a process, it is a process, excuse me, it's not an event. Mm-hmm. An event has a beginning and has a middle and it has an ending. And a lot of times people look at treatment as an event. And if you look at treatment as an event, once you leave, you're free to begin to live the lifestyle that you've lived all the time. So this is, when we're talking about this is a process, it's ongoing. These people have to live this way for the rest of their life.
Charles, a therapeutic community then is a healing community. What are you trying to heal?
Well, it's the old way of thinking. It's the thinking process that got the stinking thinking that got them in the situation that they're in. When you use drugs, what happens is that you begin to think differently about who you are as a person. That's no wonder they call drugs mind-altering experiences, because it altered the way you think and your perception of how you see life. You become more of a taker than a giver, because there's a lot of self-gratification going on. And basically your whole idea, your whole concept of looking at life is based on selfishness and how it's all predicated on who you are and what you can get out of these things. And living that type of a life, you create a thinking pattern that is supporting that lifestyle. I often say that the tip of the iceberg is the actual drug use. What's underneath the iceberg is the thinking, the stinking thinking. Think about the 12 steps, for instance. The 12-step program often talks about they only mention the drugs or alcohol once, and that's on the very first step. But every other step is always talking about relationships, character defects, and making amends. All of these things are internal changes that has to take place in a person in order to make sure that tip don't reappear, because it would always have a tendency to rear its ugly head, and that's the actual relapse of the drug itself. So drugs carry with it a way of thinking. It alters the way a person thinks, and that's what a therapeutic community is designed to do, change the way that person view life and see life as a whole, and change the lifestyle of that person so that person will begin to live differently in their life.
You described the therapeutic community as a process. Karen, I know there are lots of processes that support the therapeutic community. How do you use processes to reach these clients of yours, the inmates, and change their thinking? How do you do that?
Well, I could give you an example of a process. The processes are all built on the structure, and like Charlie says, the therapeutic community is the structure, the order, and the discipline, the very thing that these clients are lacking. So these processes are in place for really specific reasons, because what we're trying to do through the processes, by working these processes, is to reapply this structure, or maybe apply it for the first time, because most of these inmates and clients have never received any discipline or structure or order in their life. So you can take a really simple process like the visitation process, which non-secure has a different visitation process than work release. So I'll describe the non-secure. After they reach a certain phase in the program, after they do a couple of different essays and bios and a couple of different tasks, they get the privilege to put in a visitation list with their counselor, to develop this list with this counselor. And like Charlie was describing, a lot of them had this very distorted thinking process before they come into the program. So the people that they choose in their life before they come into the program are not necessarily the right people that we want to bring on property to visit them while they're trying to turn their life around. So it's really the counselor's responsibility to work this list with the client and really look at each and every person that they put on this list for safety reasons, and for recovery purposes. So the client's going to go through a real kind of question and answer kind of process to figure out if this is the right person here, and some feelings are going to be created because this is my friend, this is my buddy, I've been hanging out with this guy for 10 years, you can't tell me that this guy is not okay, he's not good. But the counselor is going to hopefully challenge this client because of the process, because this client needs to do it correctly, needs to do the right thing, follow the proper steps. So after this list gets generated, she might go along with, I got this guy that he's putting on this list, but I'm not really comfortable with this. So now the client's going to sign the list, the counselor's going to sign the list is going to get forwarded to me. So I'm going to read the counselor's suggestions, and I'm going to trust that the counselor processed this with the client, and I may or may not approve this visitor to come in. So now I'm going to give the resident request back to the client with, no, I denied this person on your visitors list, and we're going to process the visitors list itself back to program support to go into the book, to make up a card so that the program support tech who's working the window on visitation knows exactly who's allowed and who's not allowed, so that nobody could slip in. So now the client gets an opportunity to respond to this, and at that point, probably what they want to do is talk about this. So they're going to have to get a resident request to now meet with their counselor to talk about why this guy wasn't allowed on his visitors list. So he's going to have to go out into the community. He's going to have to find the guy who holds the bag, who carries the documents, to write the request, to think about how he's going to put this on paper, and to really think about how he's going to support what he wants to put on paper. By that time, he's probably spoken to 2 peers who said, if this is your running buddy here, you need not to bring him into the community. And the guy who gave him the document is going to say, well, why are you writing this request? I really don't think you should, push this through. This really doesn't seem correct. So here's this guy getting all these opportunities through the process of putting in this resident request to kind of think about something more than this thought that he was fixed on initially, that I need this guy to come on Sunday.
What I think you just described is what I call a maze. I think if you look at the maze of life, maze is a definition of a maze is that you go through a series of points where you're trying to reach a certain destination, and basically in going through those destinations, you go through certain points, dead ends, and then you go back to the right direction and trying to reach a certain position, a certain destination. And I think that as you look at this as a maze, you'll see that our clients, as they manipulate their way through this maze, they begin to learn that this is not the way to go. And if they hit one dead end after another, they realize that they have to make some adjustments in reaching and accomplishing certain objectives. And I often use the maze because it's very clear that our clients have never had that opportunity to go through the maze in life. And the reason I say that is because our young people are not born with two things, and that's good character and being a responsible adult.
Charles, you bring up a good point, because what Karen is saying, you're using these processes to provide the safety and security that the community requires you to do, but you're also accomplishing a lot of other things. And it sounds like you're putting life skills in place. I've heard you talk about the difference between addictive and criminal thinking. Could you describe that just briefly and how that relates to putting these life skills in place?
Well, addictive thinking and criminal thinking is my point. When I talk about that as a subject in training, what I'm saying is that there's more in common with addictive thinking and criminal thinking than not in common, that they don't have in common with each other. And properly is that a person develops certain behaviors that is associated with just criminal thinking. But if you look at addictive thinking, it's the same behavior, but it's for a different reason, the way they think. Because a person think they have these selfish thoughts. They're all based on being selfish, but one is for the problem of just being getting pleasure, the pleasure of having generated certain motivations, such as the selfishness to get into drugs. And then, of course, with the criminal thinking is that the adrenaline rush that's associated with committing the crime. I've had people describe to me the joy of committing a crime is that just to be able to hear the sirens and the police almost coming and the person begging for mercy as I rob them for their belongings, and all of this is just generating a certain feeling in me. And I'm thinking that I'm in control of this person's life, and basically it's a feeling of being superior, of being overly stimulated as a result of this. Well, the same thinking takes place with an addict, even though it's for a different reason, but they have these same thought patterns floating through their mind as they, for instance, a person need drugs. Okay, if I need drugs as an addict, I'm going to take risks to get the drugs. If I need drugs as a dealer, just for criminal, being involved in criminal activities, I'm going to take risks to get the drugs. And risk is what caused me to become get involved in the legal system because I'm committing a crime. If I'm a drug addict and I'm taking these risks to get the drugs, then of course I'm going to go out and steal or do some things to get that drug in my system. On the other hand, if I'm a drug dealer, I'm taking risks because I'm going out there and I'm going to possibly take a risk in terms of buying drugs from the wrong person, and subsequently they both wind up in the same place, which is the criminal justice system. So the thinking to get there is different, but they all wind up in the same location, that's prison or jail. And so if you look at the thinking is different, but the destination is the same, the results are the same.
But can I just say, because I've heard you say this so many times throughout any of the topics that we've spoken about the selfishness. And I just want to say that the deeper they get into their criminality, the deeper they get into their substance use, the more isolated they become, the more selfish they become, the more in that kind of box that we talk about, they really remove themselves from the whole rest of the world. They don't see themselves as a part of anything. They get to a point where they don't even feel like they're affecting anyone anymore. When they come into a therapeutic community, the message is that everything you do, every little action that you do has a reaction throughout the whole rest of the community, has an impact.
And it's predicated on the I, me.
Yeah.
I is three things that I use. The I is isolation, introversion, and insulation. And those three I's are basically the big ego factor that we talk about all the time in addiction. Mm-hmm. Everything is based on me, I. Right. Isolation, introversion, it's just me and my drug. I develop a love affair with the drug, and that's it. I'm insulated. I become into a state of denial because I just insulate myself with all of the thinking and all of the things that are associated with this addiction. and so I'm insulated and I become in a state of denial. It's not that I'm denying it, it's just that I don't see the problem because I'm so insulated with all of the bombardment of the drugs itself and the things that it does to the thinking patterns of an individual who are involved in drugs.
So just one last question, Karen. It seems like you're accomplishing quite a few levels of renewal of people's thinking. How important is it for the inmate, the client, to get an understanding of that very early in the process?
Oh, it's critical, because we always have to remember we're working with criminals, so we have to really catch them from day one, the minute they come in the door, to help them to know that we're not against them. We're here to help them. This is a healing community, and we're going to do our best to help them to make the changes that they need to be making so that they can walk out of here successfully. Because there's always going to be the other inmates, the other clients in the community that are on the fence, that are going to try and, scoop them up from day one. So we have to create that safety net, and we have to show them that, this is a place where hope lives, and, you can do this.